perhaps these days I should be careful how I say that. Let's watch this video.
Okay. Good morning, Tony.
Tony.
I said good morning, Tony.
Okay, no, you won't call me Tony. I'm not those people. You call me Miss Elumelu or Theory. You won't call me Tony or Chairman. I don't subscribe to that kind of Oyibo life, okay? All right.
Good morning, Mr. Elumelu.
Thank
so my
you.
question is, how do you know if you are to keep going?
Good morning, Tony. 3 words. That's all it took to start a national conversation. At a recent UBA event, a young woman stood up to ask Tony Elumelu a question. She began, "Good morning, Tony." Mr. Elumelu corrected her. "Not Tony, Mr. Elumelu or TOE." She corrected herself, continued with her question, and that probably should have been the end of it. But this is Nigeria. We turned 3 words into a national debate. One side said, these Gen Z children have no respect. The other said, but Tony is literally his name. And I've been thinking about it. Because maybe this conversation isn't really about Tony Elumelu. Maybe it's about us. What exactly does respect sound like in Nigeria? Growing up, many of us understood respect through language. You didn't just say, yes. You said, yes, sir. Yes, ma. You didn't call your teacher by their first name. You didn't call your friends' parents by their first names. In some Nigerian homes, calling an older cousin by their first name could earn you one look that immediately reminded you that you have forgotten yourself. Titles matter here. Uncle, auntie, chief, doctor, pastor, professor, sir, ma. Sometimes we even call people mommy, daddy, who had absolutely nothing to do with bringing us into this world. That's Nigeria. Respect isn't always something you've expected to, you're expected to simply feel. You're expected to show it. But another generation has entered the workplace. A generation working remotely with bosses they've never physically met. A generation sending messages directly to CEOs. A generation exposed to workplaces where the managing director walks in and says, please don't call me sir, call me David. And suddenly, 2 cultures are meeting inside the same office. One says, respect the hierarchy. The other says, respect the person. And maybe those aren't always the same thing. But I can call you sir every morning and still disrespect your time, ignore your instructions, and do terrible work. And I can call you by your name while valuing your experience, listening to you, and treating you with dignity. So maybe respect is bigger than vocabulary, but vocabulary still matters, because if you're entering someone's organization and you're unsure how they prefer to be addressed, start formal. If they say, please call me Tony, fantastic. You've lost nothing. Here's where I think the conversation became unfair. She called him Tony. He told her how he preferred to be addressed, and she adjusted. She didn't argue. She didn't roll her eyes. She didn't say, but that's your name. She corrected herself and continued. That's the difference between getting respect wrong and being disrespectful. Those aren't the same thing. Sometimes 2 people simply walk into the same room carrying different definitions of what respect looks like. And once you've told the expectation in that room, respect means honoring it. She did instantly. So maybe the mistake was never really the story. Maybe our reaction to it was. But there's another part of this conversation that fascinates me. Why does familiarity so often travel down the hierarchy, while respect travels up? Think about it. A chairman can call a graduate trainee by her first name. Nobody finds that strange. But can the graduate trainee call the chairman by his name? Suddenly, national emergency. A 65-year-old executive can say, Queen, come here. Perfectly normal. But if Queen responds, okay, Mazino, ha! Now everybody wants to hold a meeting. So perhaps we're not only discussing names. Perhaps we're also discussing power. Who is allowed familiarity? Who must demonstrate difference? And where is the line between respecting hierarchy and worshiping it? Now, I don't think the answer is to throw away our culture. There is value in acknowledging elders, in recognizing experience. And young people should understand that confidence doesn't mean walking into every room behaving as though everybody there is your mate. Humility still matters, but respect cannot only travel upwards. Our leaders, bosses, and elders must demonstrate it too. You cannot demand "sir" from a junior employee while speaking to them without dignity. A title can acknowledge your position. It cannot manufacture character. So maybe both generations have something to learn. To younger people, read the room. When you're unsure, stand formal. There is nothing outdated about courtesy. And to the older generation, maybe every young person who doesn't say "sir" isn't disrespectful. Sometimes they simply learned a different professional language. Correct them, tell them your preference. Then look at what happens next. Because character is revealed not only in the mistake, but in the response to correction. And now there's another chapter, again, to this story. Following all the attention surrounding that matter, we were told that Mr. Elumelu has reportedly met and connected with the young woman again. And I think there's something important in that, because while the internet was busy deciding who was right, who was wrong, who was disrespectful, and what was apparently wrong with an entire generation, the two people actually, or allegedly involved, have moved forward. Maybe we should learn something from that too. We live in an age where one awkward moment can become your entire identity. One sentence, one video, one mistake like this, and suddenly strangers who have never met you know your character, your upbringing, your address, where you're from, who brought you up, apparently how your parents, paid your fees. But people are bigger than their worst, or simply their most misunderstood moments. Sometimes a mistake should become a lesson, not a life sentence. Because if someone gets something wrong, accept the correction and does better, what exactly are we still punishing them for? And perhaps that's the part of this story I like most. She adjusted, he reached out. They moved forward. Maybe social media should too. So perhaps the question isn't simply, should she have called him Tony? Maybe the better question is, who gets to define respect? Is it the person speaking, the person being addressed, our culture, or maybe it's a little bit of all three? Because someone can call you sir every day and have absolutely no respect for you, and someone can call you by your first name and hold you in the highest regard. So maybe "good morning, Tony" wasn't evidence that an entire generation had lost its values. Maybe it was simply a moment a young woman read the room differently. She was corrected, and she adjusted. And the man she addressed appears willing to move beyond it. And perhaps maturity isn't never making a mistake. Perhaps maturity is knowing how to correct one and having enough grace to let other people move beyond theirs. So where do we draw the line? Is respect in the title we use or in the way we treat each other? Maybe the answer is both. And on that note, good morning, Mr. Elumelu.